just when we thought we were safe and COVID wasn't going to impact the AFL competition, guess what? We might be back with some COVID protocols. Maybe not in the crowds, but certainly the AFL starting to mix some games around. But before we talk about what could happen, let's talk about what happened last week. And you mentioned that Brisbane at home are a different team, but you still thought Port Adelaide might have enough. That wasn't the case.
Well, I thought because there was projected wet weather, Port Adelaide are known for being that strong contested team, and it just never eventuated for them. Brisbane just absolutely ran them out of the park, and it was pretty good football to watch. Their small forwards got involved. They were able to win the clearances. Port Adelaide were just soundly beaten all around the ground, and that's the last 2 times at the Gabba that Port Adelaide have been beaten by convincing margins. So there's maybe something there that the Lions just know how to beat the power.
Bet you didn't see the Suns upsetting Collingwood. We're talking about an embattled Collingwood that really needed a win.
Yeah.
They didn't do it.
Yeah, no, I think I speak for most people when I don't think anyone was expecting it. I thought, we've known Gold Coast to be that team that have been super good at home as of recent times, but they haven't really travelled to Victoria very well. Well, they put that to bed and beat a Collingwood side that is in absolute dire straits at the moment.
Will the coach survive? We'll leave that for later. Look, I've got to ask you a question. The Giants, at the very beginning of the season, they started poorly. They had a bunch of injuries, as you clearly explained. And then Steve Coniglio got injured, and they made Toby Green the captain. And from that day on, it's been a different Greater Western Sydney.
They've just followed on from his lead. They've played with the energy that we see from Toby Green, and it's just gone on to the rest of the team, and they're playing some really, really good football at the moment. I personally tipped Adelaide. I wasn't expecting to see a GWS performance like that, but they just absolutely dominated from start to finish, and even though they won by a huge margin, it could have even been more, which was the scary thing. Adelaide were just not themselves. They just got caught up in too much pressure, and GWS just made them pay.
Is St Kilda going to be called Sybil? We don't know who turns up, but when they do turn up, wow.
When they do turn up, they are a definite top 8 team. But
Hawks weren't in it.
As we've said before, when do they show up? So we saw the great St Kilda last weekend. They put it away pretty early, led by guys like Zach Jones and Brad Hill, and Paddy Ryder comes in. I think Paddy Ryder is the key to that football team. When he comes back, just adds another element to the ruck. They're able to get their first hands on the ball, and they make teams pay. So I think the entrance back of Paddy Ryder had something to do with that.
Geelong and the Swans, didn't see that upset.
I don't think anyone saw that upset, and I don't even think Geelong saw it themselves. Geelong were in control.
Up until the last moment.
Up until literally the last moments. And as we say in football, bad kicking is bad football, and bad kicking 100% cost the Cats in that one.
What did you make of Essendon and Carlton?
I think it was just a pretty stock standard Essendon Carlton rivalry, a game that you expect. It had a bit of everything. It was free-flowing football, was really high scoring. We had a few little tussles in there, lots of passion by both teams. It was a brilliant game to watch, and the Blues got a much-needed win, because had they lost that one and gone to 2-5 on the season, heading into a couple of tough weeks coming up, could have been pretty bad for the Blues, so it was a very much-needed win.
North Melbourne have been really struggling, but they're playing a better brand of football, more competitive, and they played one of the better sides in the competition that's still undefeated, the Melbourne Demons.
Yeah.
And it was like an arm wrestle for quite some time.
It was for about 2 and a bit quarters. It really was an arm wrestle. North Melbourne definitely held their own and showed that maybe they're not as bad as what we've seen from the first few weeks, but then Melbourne towards the end, they just flexed their muscle. I think North Melbourne just ran out of legs and couldn't keep up, and Melbourne just ran over the top. They just kicked a few quick goals in a row, and that was the ball game.
Eagles against the Dockers?
I tipped West Coast, and I thought that was a pretty stock standard result. As good as Freo have been, they've got some problems down back at the moment. Now they've got another youngster and one of their young backmen going down as well. They can't catch a break in the back line, and that experienced forward line of the Eagles made them pay.
And the other game that we didn't talk about, of course, was the Western Bulldogs up against the Richmond Tigers. The Tigers, whenever they seem to get questioned, the next week they are a very different unit. And with that in mind, let me ask you, Richmond up against Geelong. And It's going to be at the G. So, what are you thinking?
Well, it is the grand final rematch.
Don't do this to me. I don't like. It's not the grand final rematch unless it's in the grand final. All right. Let's not run that line again. Okay.
Well,
sorry. It's one of my pet hates. One of my pet hates.
It is a rematch, and I think despite the Tigers, they're going to have Cochin out this week. They will likely have Dylan Grimes out because of concussion, but they've got Dusty back. They do have Nick Vlosten coming back as well. So out with 2, in with 2 stars. So I still think Richmond are just going to run over the top.
Giants, Essendon. Now we're going to see what Essendon's built and what their young crop of players are all about. Because this, on paper, you would say is going to be a very difficult game. But again, who fronts? Will it be the Giants with Toby Green leading them? Or will it be this young Bombers group starting to stand up? They're all 7 foot tall. I mean, gee.
They're all big boys. And I think the big talking point from this game is we've got COVID case in Sydney again. Oh, yes. And this game is supposed to be played in Sydney. So there's a bit of talk that this game is probably going to get moved or something of that sort. And, you know, they were supposed to be playing on the Saturday and they can't really switch that game to Melbourne because later in that day they've got a game at Marvel and they've got a game at the MCG that night. So this adds
just another variable, doesn't it?
It just adds another challenge. So when and eventually this game does get done, I expect GWS to win. Despite the Bombers being the young crop and they've got a nice, exciting young list, I think GWS, just with guys like, you know, Lockie Whitfield's back, Toby Green, Callan Ward, all those sort of guys, I think they're just going to get them.
Well, the Suns have surprised everyone for a couple of weeks. Can they continue against St Kilda?
and again, it's a which St Kilda are we going to get? You know, and as I said before, I really think this team hinges on the availability of Paddy Ryder. He just adds another element, another big element to them, and gives them first hands on the football. And look, I'm going to go the roughie here. I think Gold Coast could get it done in Gold Coast. They're playing good enough football, and they deserve it. Tip.
Can North break through and beat Collingwood?
You know what? This is going to be their first week. This is going to be the first win of the season. I think they've been playing good enough for the last 2 to 3 weeks that a win is going to come soon enough.
Okay. The Demons have got a huge game. It's against that young, swarming Swans team. But the Demons are unbeaten. Does it continue?
The Demons are unbeaten, and I think at the MCG, I think they're going to continue.
And they've had some tremendous news through the week. That young Christian Petrarca, who I think played basketball with young Simmons.
He did.
He's doing okay. He's just signed a huge contract.
He's doing all right. And, there's been just a casual 7-year extension worth about $6-7 million. No biggie. But I think there's been a lot of debate around the length of the contract and, and all that sort of stuff.
Well, it's very 18 months to go.
Yeah, and it's very similar to a Brodie Grundy situation, and we're sort of seeing a bit of talk about that. But I think I don't think it really matters too much to the fans, the media and all that. Melbourne truly believe that Petrarca is the guy to lead them going forward, and that's all that will matter at the end. So they've signed their man.
And you think the Demons to win?
I do think the Demons will win.
Showdown is next. What do you reckon?
I'm expecting Port Adelaide to bounce back, and not just bounce back. I think they're going to bounce back in a big way. Because they've got too much on the Crows, who at last have gone missing. The Crows have gone missing. It's very similar to a Sydney situation. Their sort of bubble has burst the last couple of weeks, and Which of the vicious birds, the Eagles and the Hawks, win the next contest? You'd expect the Eagles to get up, but Hawthorn are that tricky team where when you least expect it, they can come out and beat a team such as West Coast. But I think you got to give West Coast the tip. Okay, Western Bulldogs looked terrific up until last week when they ran into Richmond, who play a slightly different football. They're up against your Navy Blues, my Navy Blues. What happens? Do we get thumped, or do the Bulldogs just sit back and go, "Wow, this young Blues is growing"? Well, if you look at the last 3 results, 2 out of the last 3 times the Blues have absolutely, run out of the park with the Bulldogs. They've won by 50 and 40 points in 2 out of those 3 times, and the one that the Bulldogs did win, it was only by 3 points. Now, the Bulldogs do we match them? The Bulldogs do have a very different look about them now. They've got a much stronger midfield, but The Blues, for some reason, match up very well. And
Wow.
although the Bulldogs are going to get my tip,
Yep.
Carlton can definitely give them a run for their money this week.
All right, we'll see how good your tipping is. And the last one in the round is Lions up against the Dockers.
I think it's pretty stock standard. And the game was supposed to be in Perth, but because of the whole COVID situation in Perth, that's been moved to the Gabba. So I think that only just gives more of an advantage to Brisbane. So the Lions should get up.
And last bit of good news, while COVID is impacting a lot of other things, we're hearing that Marvel Stadium and GMHBA are going to have what?
Yep, they're increasing their capacity to 85% in line with the MCG, which is fantastic news. And along to go with that, starting from next round, reserve seat members are going to be able to sit in their reserve seat spots now. So that's a pretty big boost for a lot of members for each club.
It'll almost feel like it's footy season back. Alex Caiafa, as he does on each and every week on The Informer, keeps us up to date with the latest in the AFL. And as we've heard, anything could happen. There are some questions being posed by COVID. Will games be moved? Stay with us. We'll try and keep you informed of any of these changes if they do come about. In the meantime, if you like what we do at The Informer, make sure you follow us. It's The Informer, one word, .tv.